pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that was the slowest Pledge of Allegiance I've heard in a long time, but that's just fine. Welcome, everyone. This is the last Board of Education meeting for 2012, an eventful year, certainly in the district. Overall, rather successful one. Lots to do and lots more to do. This is Christmas and Hanukkah week. I guess first day of Hanukkah was, first night was tonight. I'm not home. Hopefully they lit candles for those of my family that are of that faith. And we're going to go ahead and we do have modifications to the agenda. Brad, perhaps you could help me out with that.
Right, I've got two. There's a supplemental personnel report to add to the personnel report, and then also on the personnel report under Roman numeral 8. All four of those should read unpaid, not with dollar amounts into the spots.
Very good, just clarification.
And those are the only two changes I had.
And supplemental, correct?
Yeah, and supplemental.
And nothing to the agenda as a whole. Okay, very good. There was no one signed up to speak. Anyone wish to do that? Susan? Okay. And students, Andrew, a student. Andrew, you do not go to Cornell yet, but go ahead.
So with the upcoming holiday recess, a lot of students and teachers are under a lot of pressure to get tests done and studying for tests before break because it's hard to remember specific material over break. So one of my classes, which is the capstone of an pre-engineering sequence that the high school offers, is engineering design and development. In this class, we split into groups, and each group works on a specific project for the duration of the year. And recently, IPEI has, through Red and Gold grants, donated $1,900 towards the EDD classroom, $500 for a group working to improve an electric-powered race car, the Electrothon car, which has been going on for, I think, 5 years. $500 towards a propane dune buggy, which is taking a Volkswagen engine, converting it to run on propane, and installing it in a Volkswagen dune buggy chassis. $500 for they call it a pitching partner, which is a way to train pitchers without a catcher and very accurately measure the speed and the placement of each pitch and then return the ball to the pitcher. And $400 for an amphibious bicycle where you bike on land and then you can bike into the water.
Okay.
So
I think they made those. I think you just kind of went in the water, but go ahead.
The idea is that you can float across the water.
Oh, that. Oh, okay.
In other news, recently at Ithaca High School, we had a lockdown that lasted about 40 to 45 minutes, where it's one of our 3 required lockdown drills for the year. And as we were told afterwards, police canine units were brought in to search for narcotics and other contraband. And this slightly disrupted some classes because it was unscheduled and very long, but overall it wasn't as disruptive as many people would have expected. And that's my report.
Great, nicely done. It's tough to retain information over a 1-week break. Is that what you?
Well, it's tough to remain like specific details.
Oh, details. Okay. Have a good break. All right.
I'd like to know what it floats on.
Well,
devices?
The idea is that there are fold-up devices that when you
like
get to the water,
pontoon?
yeah, pontoons that you fold down and then you don't sink.
Remember Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? That was water. When's the first lap test?
Well, the completion date is in May, but before that, that group will have it tested. So when we get closer, I will tell you guys when, because we have an information session where each group presents their project and shows video of their first tests and better tests.
That's great, thank you. Board responses, Judy already had a question, but any other board responses at this time? No. Very good. On to the consent.
I'll move the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
Second, any other questions, comments regarding the consent? Eldred, who's faced the wrong way. Now you're back.
We should maybe make reference to the consent agenda does include a long number of considerations of accounts, and at the last facilities meeting, and a very nicely packaged present to Mr. Granger was a good number of closeout items for some of our facilities bonds projects, and so we're making pretty good headway. We hope to be
Closing out a number of the contracts finally. They were wrapped up for me, which was nice since I'd only been asking for a year. So.
right.
With a bow, I would like to add.
Nicely done, but the idea is even better that we're closing out of a number of our projects.
And it's a $147,000 reduction in costs overall. So again, we continue to be well under budget on the facilities bond. I can't say on schedule, but I can say under budget.
And on the personnel report, I did see Denise Agati name on the personnel report, correct?
Yeah.
And is this, if this is the permanent, is this, can I get a yes, this is a permanent appointment, Denise?
Say yes. Yes.
Say yes. So,
I think she's waiting for the vote first.
So we will vote in a second, but Denise, you should know it's nothing but good news out of the food service program. You've really driven and taken the district to another place, and we certainly appreciate that. And I did see the name, and we're very happy that in a second we can go ahead and you will continue in that role. So without any further ado, all those in favor? That's everyone. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
And all others on the. So I think we're done and we can go. No, we are, and I did not mention as we began is that this is our last meeting of the year, and it is the first meeting that Dr. Luval Brown has not been with us this year, and Dr. Brown is out of the district today, and we have Dr. Leslie Myers, who is sitting in as acting superintendent, and it is the superintendent's report, Dr. Myers, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd just like to report that on January 5th, 2012, the Ithaca City School District, in collaboration and partnership with the Ithaca Police Department, will be holding a safety night to talk about some recent incidents that have occurred in the community, and it's just an opportunity for us to proactively communicate with families and educate individuals about being safe in the community. Additionally, we'll just be talking about how we handle safety procedures, how our code of conduct moves forward, how the Safe Schools planning is enacted across the district. So it'll be an opportunity for people to be informed.
Is that it?
That's it.
Very good, thank you, Leslie. Just taking we could stretch. That was not anywhere near the amount of time. And so we are on to school district business. And I do see ICSD community partnerships and in parentheses at the college. Sean, you have some familiarity. You are somewhat familiar with the college. Does this have anything to do with folks you know, or?
I would not even attempt to take any of their glory, but these are young folks from a class that I teach once every 3 years called Education, Oppression, and Liberation. And we could sort of have you all get set up this way if you could. And so Dr. Myers will help you. As I introduce, we'll have a couple folks get set up. Just a quick word about the class. I teach this class once every 3 years at the to my great delight. And the course is usually scheduled where half the class is assigned, and then the remainder of the semester is literally left blank. And it's my hope that the students will then construct their own course for the last half. And so what you're seeing here is about 6 weeks of work of their design, which has been absolutely amazing. And so as they sit longer, if they've had more time, you can see even more brilliance. But you'll see at least the impact of their 6 weeks of work. Brilliance, absolute brilliance. And they had guest lectures from Dr. Brown, who came in twice, and Mr. Cal Walker, who came to speak with them as well. So without further ado, I'll let them introduce themselves and go about their business.
Very good.
You got space.
Feel free to fill the time with introductions, or we can go back and forth about we're getting set up.
I don't know. As Dr. Emily Bravo has reiterated before, we are some of the members of this course, Education, Oppression, and Liberation, and
the rest of our members are scattered throughout the audience.
On that wall. And so, yeah, we didn't do all the work, obviously. We're just the spokespeople for all the work that everybody has done. And so by no means can we take all that credit. And I'm Xavier Christmas, by the way.
My name is Ariel Lawrence. I'm Shanice Phillips.
Well, cool.
While they're working on that, can you just give me an idea of what we're going to see here and what your work entail?
Can't get all the magic away.
Okay. All I can say is, Brad will probably attest. Back in the day, if I was given half a semester to come up with, anyway, we
You
probably
might wait until the last one.
Well, yeah, we.
Not in my class, you wouldn't know.
No, it was a long time ago, and
Times are different.
Does that work out right there?
So we're trying to stretch here and entertain the folks, but it would be.
We're just waiting for the data.
We're just waiting for the connection.
Hey, Rob, can I just take a minute while we're waiting for that?
Please, please, go ahead.
We just approved a number of coaches, and I want to take a minute to recognize them for their personal and professional commitment to our students. As we noted before, these are all unpaid positions, and even the coaches who are paid provide significant hours and time to help our young people grow physically, morally, and I just wanted to acknowledge all that our coaches and assistant coaches do to produce fine citizens like Rob Ainsley.
You're really stretching that.
Thanks to all the coaches and assistant coaches.
And we should add, since you mentioned the coaches, that since they're still working, also on the personnel report were appointments for extracurricular and clubs within the district. And we should not, we never
Appreciate it.
want to forget what they do. Again, for many hours with for not a lot of compensation, but a long list of clubs at Ithaca High School, probably 100 plus the drama and Boynton and DeWitt at Ithaca High School, bands, orchestra. We're still stretching. Sean, do you want to talk about your course a little bit? No, I'm seriously right now. Tell us more about this course and what they do, if you could.
Sure, I can tell you. There's 15 students to the course. It's one of the caps. It's a 400-level course offered in the minor that we offer at the College of My Center, the Center for the Study of Culture, Race, and Ethnicity. It's part of the African Diaspora Studies minor. And the course was originally designed around a course that I used to teach called The Education of African America, trying to explore the educational programs, policies, procedures that were created for Black Americans from slavery onward. That course is then morphed into a course that we call Education, Oppression, and Liberation, and having students realize that there's ways in which education can be used to oppress, but more importantly, we're trying to find ways in which education can be used for acts of liberation, both on large scales and small scales, and much more importantly, individual and personal scales. The course is primarily built around the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, which some folks may know. It's relatively common in educational circles. And so we do a good deal of reading of John Dewey, we do a good deal of reading of Freire, we do a good deal of reading of Bell Hooks, Henry Giroux, and a bunch of folks to try to set the foundation for what schools can and should look like. Then at the halfway point, which is about just before Thanksgiving, the idea is, okay, now we want to do this education because the goal is to get it outside the classroom and make it actually real to the lives of people. This group decided, I think they were inspired by Dr. Lavelle Brown's, one of his first speeches talked to us, about the ways in which we can marshal the resources of Ithaca College along with Ithaca City School District. And since they went on a pretty exhaustive campaign for 5 to 6 weeks solid of researching and documenting what sort of community partnerships exist between Ithaca College and primarily Ithaca City School District, but also the Ithaca community at large. And so what you're going to see here is the results of this work, the research, and I imagine some sort of advocacy of ways forward, and what does that mean for us as a school district, what that means for us as a community. So if, since we are such dependent on technology, this is of course, the one day we need Dr. Brown's technical expertise. We don't have him, but I'm sure it'll be up and running momentarily. If not, we could probably put it on one of our iPads and bring it up that way as well.
So can you just email it to us on this machine? And
we could do that.
Why don't you just do that and I can hook it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just type it into the, you know, the URL?
I can log in over there.
Rob?
Go ahead, Eldred. For the good of the group, please go ahead.
For the good of the order, while we're waiting for the transfer, I just want to go back to something that we discussed, and that is Denise Agali's confirmation to the Post. Denise, I heard a rumor, and I would love to have you confirm it, because it ties into youth and education. In the community, there's a program called the Youth Farm Project, where we actually have our young people actually getting their hands dirty in the soil and growing things. And the dirty rumor I heard is that the Ithaca City School District now has a contract with those young folks to receive some of the produce that they produce. So could you educate us a little bit about what that actually all means?
It's not a rumor. We actually are purchasing some of the fruits or vegetables from the youth farm and are creating them in some plant-based entrees. Actually, next month we're going to be taste testing pasta visual, and we'll be using the kale actually grown from the students with the farm. And kale has been on the menu within the last couple months, actually from the garden itself.
Fantastic. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
It's almost there.
Yes, no, he will. No, yes, I told him about coordinating some of there's a girls' basketball game.
I know he's coming.
You have to log back into yours. Because your application is not working.
Where's your fancy?
So Pat, what's like going on at Cornell these days? I heard like there's $1 billion project going on in New York City and all that.
Yeah, they didn't consult me on that, Rob.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, Pat.
But we're in favor of it.
Yeah, you're basically, I understand it's not for the humanities. It's not really a focal point.
It is. I believe it's a graduate technology program.
Yes, I believe so.
Received $350 million from Atlantic Philanthropies. Very generous to our community.
The largest gift ever to Cornell University, which is.
Maybe Christmas.
And we're here on behalf of Dr. Sean Emersley Bradwell's Education, Oppression, and Liberation class. And what we want to talk to you about is a project that we've been working on to promote partnerships between Ithaca College and the community. So this is how it's going to go tonight. We're going to give you some theoretical grounding. We're going to tell you exactly what we want, why we want it, and what that means for all of us here in this room. So for some theoretical grounding, let's go to this quote by Horace Mann. Doing nothing for others is the undoing of ourselves. You may know he's the founder of the Common Schools movement, a famed educator. And we really like the sentiment of this quote, but we have a little bit of problems with the wording of it. It's a little, it kind of displays a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Power balance.
Power balance, thank you very much. So we prefer to think of it in this way. The doing nothing with others is the undoing of ourselves. There's a quote by the Brazilian scholar, Paulo Freire, author of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. She goes, authentic education is not carried on by A for B, or by A about B, or rather by A with B. And we want to make sure we get this rhetoric down because we're going to be talking about this a lot this evening. That is, we can't think of it as working for other people, we need to think of it working together with other people. So, when we think about community partnerships, we usually see them as the distinct initiatives of a couple of different organizations. So think of it in terms of the Ithaca City School District, Ithaca College, Cornell University, and different community groups, whatever they may be. But we really shouldn't think of it this way, because they're all part of the same whole. And so why do we bring this up? And answer that, Ariel.
So recently, any Ithaca College student has been inundated with language and mention of IC 2020. The 2020 vision essentially is Ithaca College's plan in order to re-emerge by the year 2020 as one of the leading institutions of higher education. And within that, there was an entire section dedicated to civic engagement in which the campus decided to put forth the language that they were going to engage with, they were going to do civic engagement in the community as well on a global scale in order to promote partnerships within Ithaca College and the community. So in this vein, we are holding our institution accountable for their words because we are their students, and according to them, it is all for us. So, and we are holding them accountable by doing some of the legwork that they propose to do, just the very, very, very 6-week tip of the iceberg of the work that needs to be done, by exploring community partnerships, and also proposing a way in which these partnerships can be integrated on every level of the college experience within Ithaca College that will prioritize the students as well as the administrative and the community's voice on an equal scale. So in order to go about this, the class has done multiple things. So we have interviewed a host of IC faculty and staff members as well as community partner members in order to try to ascertain exactly what is going on with community partnerships on campus. We also created a database that is being in the process of being built into a website that we would desire to be. And right now, it's public within like the framework of our class, but we desire it to be public and maintained by the school, so that students will always have a frame of reference if they have any interest. So if I'm a freshman and I'm extremely, extremely passionate about food justice, but I have no idea where to go, this database will allow me to know what partnerships and what programs were done in the past, and who I can go to, or who I know that knows I can go to maybe think of doing something along that vein. Outside of the database and as well as the interviews, we also created a research white paper, which researched as many as we could the partnerships on Ithaca College's campus, as well as provided a need assessment highlighting specific themes that we felt like I'll talk about later, that we felt like could be improved as far as existing partnerships. Oh, you know what? Could you go back? I apologize. I forgot the most important part. a governing board was right there behind me the entire time. A governing board to not only make sure that the things that this project has done or the task of the civic engagement IC 2020 task force can do, but to make sure that it is being facilitated, and that it is being maintained. So a governing board that involves community partners, Ithaca College students, as well as faculty members and administrators that helps with this integration across all levels. Thank you. So within the needs assessment, as well as kind of the general rhetoric of the class, there were certain key points that we felt like needed to be addressed as far as improving community partnerships. The first one being longevity. And simply put, how to make programs last longer than 1 semester, 1 year, past when a teacher leaves, past when a student organization goes under new leadership. How is it that we can integrate and retain student and faculty involvement? We also address the idea of administrative support, and also I'd like to kind of shoot off that and say administrative communication. So how do we make, because one of the main issues of community partnerships is that you're making 2 separate structures speak to each other. So how is it that we can allow for better communication between administrations in order to support the mutual needs of Ithaca College students, Ithaca City School District students, and the community as a whole? Classroom integration is referring to going beyond just the binary volunteer and service learning models. In order to make sure that the community partnerships are integrated top to bottom to the entire college experience, so that it's not really an idea that I'm doing it for a grade or I'm doing it because my organization wants me to, but I'm doing it because it's a part of how I live my life at Ithaca College. And most importantly, among all of this, we want to really put forth an air of equality of what we're doing. We are trying to avoid a top-down approach to community partnerships in which the college, which is the specialized, knowledgeable force, comes and gives the community what it's lacking. It's not true at all. In fact, especially within the Ithaca community, there's so much that can be shared. There's so many fluid resources that can be shared and transferred that whatever happens in this, we want to make sure that community voices, student voices, all student voices, and administrative voices have an equal playing field in everything that we do.
So a couple of our students have put together a video that actually highlights some aspects of the interview process, as well as like some of the testimonials about the respective and the importance of community partnerships and why this is important to have and to embrace, and also to work together collaboratively. And so we're going to let those members speak for themselves through this video. And we'll be short.
Should you have sound? Yes. Yeah. Let's try. Try it again.
Is the sound computer on?
Yeah. There you go. It's coming. Is it muted on my laptop?
Yeah, is the sound of the computer on?
Because everything else is on here and we're connected. Yeah, you're up. There you go.
Just got more and you can make it full screen.
Individuals in which both parties are giving an equal amount.
Is that okay, Sal?
Sharing resources.
That's richly collaborative.
A relationship between 2 different parties or individuals in which both parties are giving an equal amount. Sharing resources, both people, equipment, ideas.
When 2 or more groups come together to address a common problem or task with some sense of shared ownership. A shared vision and mission regarding some need in the community.
have a long-term relationship through my classes with the Youth Center.
I took Alon Shapiro's class, Social Justice and Sustainability, which was a community service learning class. We talked about race in class and did like cultural competency training. And we're partnered up with the community organization downtown.
I'm currently a Big Sister with the Ithaca Youth Bureau and the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I've been with my little for a year and a half now, and I find it extremely gratifying and a good way for me to touch base with the community.
My daughter attends BJM Elementary School, and I know that there's some students from IC who go down to BJM and are involved in some sense in helping them think about good food choices.
Working with a young woman who was running the after-school program at Southside Community Center, the two of us were able to write a grant proposal for a small pot of money, $500, which we could get up here at the college, to purchase and then implement a really culturally rich curriculum in the after-school program.
I would almost say that we can't do what we're doing without Ithaca College. Not only do many of the Ithaca College students over time volunteer with us and do a great job in the various roles that we teach them to take on, but they also help us brainstorm how to provide more services to the community for free. Community partnerships are hard work, and they need a lot of support.
Things are not always neat. Things are not always clean. Things are not always convenient. And sometimes when students take on projects and want to become involved with community-based organization, doing some very important work, it can be inconvenient. It really can. The times of greatest needs may not necessarily conform to the most convenient time in a student's schedule.
But something we call a charity model, in which the college partner thinks they have expertise or resources that should be brought to bear on a particular issue, and they're defining the issue in a certain way that might be at odds with either how the community partner would define the problem, or they define the action that they're going to take in such a way that it becomes a burden.
Me, from my position of privilege, I'm helping you in your underprivileged position, is a dynamic that does not lead to fruitful partnerships.
Organizations were eager to work with our students and wanted to make very clear from up front, yes, we want to work with you, don't you dare think you're coming here to help us.
I'm Ithaca College, we're powerful. Ithaca community may not have the power they need, so we as Ithaca College are going to help lift you up. Well, maybe it's not like that. Maybe Ithaca College has got a power, maybe community of Ithaca's got a power, and together we may be able to share resources that can create sustainability for all of us as a community.
There's definitely a separation just naturally between a campus and a community. That's going to happen anywhere, especially for students who are stuck here on campus. But that's an even greater a greater motivator to get students down there, because it will open their eyes up so much and then motivate them themselves to get off campus and to do these things on their own.
Students learn in a much richer way.
I quite honestly believe that in the 21st century, our learning is simply incomplete. It is confined to classrooms and laboratories and lecture halls.
By having to navigate real-life situations and build relationships, I think students end up learning in a way that you just can't replicate in the classroom.
Feeling like one is part of a community, developing compassion and knowledge and awareness for other people in one's community, and developing that greater sense of place. That in itself makes these projects worthwhile.
So that was a little bit of some of the work that we have done, some of the interviews, and that we've used to work off of in proposing this idea. And so we looked first at the, as was previously stated, like the task force that Ithaca College proposed as part of its IC 2020, and looking at their civic engagement and what they thought about it. And so one of the things that they had mentioned was this idea of having a center for civic engagement, or at least a task force or some governing body. But what we found kind of different and troublesome was the fact that it only contained people from Ithaca College. It only contained some faculty and staff, and then like a couple of students here or there. And we feel that that is only going to further enhance that whole dynamic of us being like this force up here on the hill coming down to help people, which is the absolute wrong mindset to take into this, especially because we are also dependent upon one another to make this whole community work. Like, one cannot survive without the other. And so utilizing that, we feel that it's not going to be, it's going to be a completely reciprocal partnership and process, and we ideally want, you know, we had a student that talked about the notion of IC students coming down in the community, but also bringing the community up to us and using them around the wide array of options and resources that we all have available. So what we are asking of you all is for your support with this project, especially because they had talked about a satellite center that was going to be put down to Ithaca community in the city, and they said that was going to be a few years coming. So obviously a lot of us may not be here to try to like push that forth, but we also need the help of the community if that is indeed that you all see fit as well. Like, by no means are we trying to force anything upon you, because then that's just doing exactly what we're trying to avoid. So really we just want your support for this, and potentially in the future when we do have like more plans actually to make this governing body and bring it down to the city and have that satellite center, we want the support of not only just the IC school district, but like the schools within representatives as a part of that, as representatives from the community groups and organizations. We want students from all facets and all levels to be a part of this whole center, just because we need that perspective, that voice that we can get from everybody in order to make things happen and really create those collaborative reciprocal partnerships. And so the time may come where we may also need to ask for some financial aid as well, but we definitely want for you all to hold us accountable and us to do the same as well. And so it's just something that we really want for you all to try to consider and see if it is something that you seek valuable. And so we're going to open up the floor to questions, comments, concerns, whatever you like. Are there any questions?
I'm sure. Go ahead.
The goals for 2020, is civic involvement one of them? I mean, every student at IC is held accountable for some kind of civic involvement.
Ultimately, that's the basis that they're trying to get to, and having that service input in it. But also that can be kind of troublesome too, in terms of if you're forcing people to partake in this kind of work, that's not going to be beneficial for anybody. You have to get people who truly want this. And so we seek that if we have the center, it can be a source that people, as a resource that people can go to realize all these partnerships that do exist in order to actually, you know, pique your interest and find something that you may be interested for, as opposed to forcing you to do something in that way. So.
Would it be a 4-year commitment or a one-term commitment? I
mean, all we can hope for truly is like consistency. So like ideally it would be that for 4-year plan, but you know, it's really up to that particular student at the time too, to really base that off of.
And as far as the language of the IC 2020 report and kind of response to civic engagement, it is very hopeful and very idealistic, and to be critical of it, sometimes it can be a bit vague. So questions like these need to be raised. There need to be critical minds that are associated with the task force that hold the college accountable, that are asking questions and specifically about the logistics. How long? What's the commitment? What does it look like? How can we get involved? And that's something else that we are asking for. We're asking for people from the community who would like to be a part of who have been involved in community partnerships and would like to be a part of community partnerships, to bring that critical mind and that critical voice in holding the institution accountable.
Other questions? Go, Seth.
So we have a position and a relationship with someone up at Cornell. It's kind of a point person. Who's the point person at IC on this? Is it you guys, or
sorry?
Who is there a liaison role, and who is that person?
We have a person named by the name of Anthony Hobson, who controls the position of managing those partnerships.
What's been his role in this class and this vision that you've just showing us here?
Dr. Ashley Bradwell, because you had spoken with Mr. Hobson earlier. Could you go into that?
The purpose of the class is to make myself irrelevant. Especially in the second half.
Interesting. We actually tried to talk to Mr. Hobson, but he was, due to the short time period that we had at the end of the semester, he was out of town. So we had set up to have an interview and meetings with him, and it didn't end up happening. But that's something that we hope for in coming classes with Dr. Eversley Bradwell, as well as hopefully students in this class taking on independent studies or something of that nature to continue the conversation, because we really wanted to get the community perspective and faculty and staff perspective and student perspective, but also talk to the people who are in control of the IC 2020, which didn't ultimately happen to the extent that we wanted it to.
Go ahead, Chris.
So with this collaboration and the idea of bringing strengths from on the Hill and the strengths from the community, give me a specific example of how that looks and what the end result would be.
I had an interview with Dr. Jeff Klaus, who was shown in the video. We had a very good conversation about, because he was the one who mentioned the charity model. I would say, I mean, to give you specifics, there are, I would say within the education department, as well as like, I know Chris is one of the student leaders in peer-to-peer, which is like a student tutoring program. It would be a relationship in which it's not necessarily my needs, which are most important, because I am the IC student who's sacrificing my time, but that it's a program in which one that is hopefully dedicated to enriching the community through education, whether it be social education or tutoring, but also one that specifically the needs of both are met. So if I say I'm dedicated to change, I'm an education major, or I'm not an education major, I just want to be involved in the community. It is giving me the space to be involved with a program where I'm held accountable for my actions. I'm not allowed to do kind of what I feel and what I want, or come in and where I am held accountable for my consistency, and I'm also made to give feedback and contribute in order to figure out how the program can be improved structurally as well.
Is this higher level volunteering?
I guess in a sense per se it is, but it goes both ways too, because I think we also want to try to get students within the school district to be out there more and volunteering more and partaking in these different projects too. And so just trying to find those ways in which we can kind of pique those interests and all come together as one and really form that whole collaborative community.
You want to say something?
No, I personally thought higher level to me personally isn't the word. I would say more like accountable volunteering, where you take this thing seriously, and it's a transfer not just as students but even as people to do what we are to do as citizens and be held accountable for our contribution to our society locally and where we are.
Mr. Walker talked about, I like the way Cal put what his expectations are of the 21st century classroom. And it's one where walls disappear, where there is no disconnect between what you're learning in space A and what's actually happening in space B. So could you, if you're aware of it, what in the goals for 2020 speak about integrating real life into your classroom curriculum? I mean, the odd thing is we're still having a conversation as if you were giving something up by rolling off the hill and dealing with the locals. And in my experiences, even as an undergraduate, the joke is just actually reversed. You know nothing. It's obvious as soon as you step into these spaces, you try and volunteer, but you know nothing. And that what you're learning in the classroom is at least irrelevant, sometimes possibly damaging to the very groups you're trying to impact. So I'm assuming that document actually addresses this and almost mandates that you will get out of those spaces and you will do something, and that your grades will be held accountable by how you perform in this new spaces. Is there any kind of language like that in the document?
I wouldn't say anything that speaks specifically to that kind of accountability. I would say there is idealistic language as far as like in making Ithaca College accountable to the community, but there's also this there's a lot of mention as far as like Ithaca College being like civic engagement and putting it on a global scale, which seems to be kind of the air of the document as a whole. The idea of rebranding the school is reemerging as something that is a facility or an institution that will be competitive on a global scale, which is something I had an issue with because I don't feel like things were being properly engaged with in the very community that Ithaca resides in. But there is the language specifically does state enriching. It has language of, or the idea of enriching the college experience by getting beyond the space of the hill itself. So yes, that is in there.
Just to follow up with Eldred regarding language, you did use a word that I found a little interesting. Just to remind you, you are speaking to a board of volunteers, and so you use the word sacrificing your time. So that goes to we probably have an issue that still goes back to I'm a student. I'm going to give you something. I'm going to sacrifice my time and do something in the community. We contribute our time every week and throughout the multiple years that we all serve. So we're looking to collaborate with Cornell, Ithaca College in ways that enhances the experience for our students and improves the community. We've had meetings in the past few years, and I'll go back to this. We had this out with Cornell past few years regarding budgets. How can we provide programming still in the budget environment in which we are forced to put together our programming and our budgets? And we had a big uproar in some of our budget processes, and we had folks from Ithaca College come down and talk about how in the world can we consider cutting X program or Y program. And I had an Ithaca College professor basically stand up and said, I can do this and that, and you never asked me. So so again, the onus on us is always to do the ask. So we appreciate when the students come through and really what you do now. We certainly know the students volunteer in the schools, whether it's mentoring, whether it's tutoring, it's great. That's what happens now. We have Ithaca College students that are student teachers within our district, so they certainly benefit that way. So what's the next step? So where do we go from here? Well, if this is going to be a greater collaboration, it has to be beyond sacrificing time. Yes, students are busy. We're all busy too. So we all have jobs, and we contribute our time to the community and the district in our way, and are looking to partner with others that want to do the same. So I'll stop and go ahead, Sean.
Well, I think right along the lines, I think one of the impetuses for this project, from the students, please correct me if I'm wrong, was the fact of recognizing what Elder was saying, of finding ways to get outside the classroom, that the real learning oftentimes take place outside the regular class hours. And so that was the spark behind trying to research what community partnerships were trying to do this very thing of extending the learning outside the classroom. In 6 short weeks, the students have produced a video, a presentation, an active database that is hopefully searchable and clickable, as well as a white paper. And the white paper will be dropped into board members' Dropbox in the next day or so. We'll send links to the Prezi as well as to the PowerPoint in the database. In other words, the idea is, from the student's perspective, and again, if I'm speaking for you, tell me if I'm wrong, is to try to hold the college accountable to what they started to put on paper. As they're going through the project, they're realizing that the initial drafts of Ithaca College's civic engagement gets changed as it goes through more and more committees. In essence, gets, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the word, gets watered down, right? So it goes from having a satellite office downtown to, it's probably not necessary. right? And so I guess that one of the goals is to that you all aren't necessarily the primary audience. One of the goals is actually to hold the college accountable to do the very thing you're talking about, where it becomes a mutually beneficial partnership, not just about giving up some time, not just about a resume filler, right? But the fact is that multiple forms of our community have expertise and resources that they could share, and we'd all be the richer for it if we'd make it happen. And that was one of the primary, I've been amazed this semester how these 15 students have called me to task about my language and about my framing of these issues, and reminding me the fact that this needs to be mutually beneficial as opposed to a top-down approach. And so throughout our conversations, I'm sure what you don't get translated here is the 40, 50 hours of dialogue, debate, and discussion that happened to whittle it down to get into a 15-minute presentation. So from my perspective, thank you all, and I still think you should need to push us to more to hold us to our resources, but we're going to get to that point in time.
So it sounds like they get an A.
Well, hold on, I think it's an important part of the project. We began day one.
I'm working for you here. I'm trying.
Absolutely. But we began day one of the course by saying grades are immaterial, right? That if you do the work, you're going to get an A, because I don't want that to be the driving force behind the work that we do. So I wanted folks to be invested in the project, so that the grade was not the driving force for what we do. And what I've been impressed by is the level of commitment and the amounts of hours they put together. Again, it's a short period of time to make this happen. And I think, in some regards, for me, the class has been a success because we never had a conversation about grades at any point in time. It was much more about how can we put together a top-notch pieces of information to get people to understand how this is so important. So that's a great point about grades, and maybe we'll have to revisit the automatic A thing in the future.
I'd like to hear more about the database.
Oh yeah, that was probably one of the most fun parts. If anyone in the class wants to jump in on this, essentially that was just us doing legwork. That was. Can I share the conversation you had with Mr. Hopkins? When Doc first came in the class and he was talking, we're asking about, he asked the question to, is Hobson? Is that's correct? Hobson. Anthony Hobson, do you what are our community partnerships on Ithaca College's campus? And his response was, I'd like to know that too. There's and the idea that there is no unified place, no running database, no list that allows for students, faculty, staff, anyone to be able to go in and say this is, so the information is stored solely on kind of personal relationships, which are very vital parts of community partnerships, but it makes it very difficult for those things to function, again, once a professor leaves, once a student graduates, once a student organization goes through a different kind of leadership. So the purpose of the databases was it was basically created by us going out, getting the information. Through that, we decided different people. The video group wanted to interview in order for the interviews for the documentary. But yeah, it is a running list of everything that we investigated. Some has more detail than other, but it's everything that we could get our hands on and try to figure out what has been accomplished in the past couple of years on the college's campus.
And a quick comment again, and the students expect this to be it's a working document. They know it's incomplete, but since there's been no infrastructure to try to catalog what we're doing across various schools and colleges, the various schools at Ithaca College, to get us a running start to be able to say, here's at least what we've been able to identify in 6 weeks. We're expecting people to fill this in, to make corrections, and so I will send the link out to the board so they can have they can use that database and click it. Maybe we can even have Dr. Brown listed on the ICSD website at some point in time.
Chris, Eldred, and the guy in the back. Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Sean for being an observer. I think, and to answer your question, well, respond to your statement, as far as volunteering, I think what's missing is the changing of the mindset of Ithaca College and Ithaca One Community. And the people who participate become part of the Ithaca community while they are here. That's where the beauty in your downtown location would be definitely necessary to break down those walls. That's going to alleviate the hill town mentality and all those things. And I think that's where people come here and they leave their community. Now they're part of the Ithaca community. So making that transition with that mindset, and it's not volunteering, you just transition to your new community while you're here. And when Rob's talking about we do volunteer, but we're actually working in our community. So It's needed work, it's necessary work that gets reflected back on our quality of life. So that's where you guys aren't giving and you know, volunteering your time. So that's just a mindset shift that needs to be communicated, and I don't know how you guys do that or work with that model, but I just want to throw that out there so it makes the shift from that volunteering to participating in your community.
Go ahead, Elder.
There's a message that you need to take back to the people who are planning the center, and I don't know if you're the avatars or how that message is going to be relayed appropriately, but I've worked with some of the students at Ithaca College through someone in this room at a pretty high level, and they were working to really move one of our businesses from point A to point B. And I was just shocked, and I think Christine was as well, by how much time we had to spend training those students not to look at us as if we were deficit models. Right now, I'm not trying to blow myself up, but you know, between the two of us, we're some of the most sophisticated people in this city.
If you don't say so yourself.
If we don't say so ourselves. But the students, it was impossible for them to see us that way. It literally was impossible for them to see us that way. Now, I don't know what the veil was. Was it race? Was it class? Was it a generational gap? Was it just expectations? Was it the superiority complex? But that was painful to work through, boy. It required us to really listen to that particular professor and not blow up the relationship by just reducing them to tears, which we probably could have if we wanted to. So if the institution is serious about making this engagement, I don't know how you teach young people that, but it was astounding to us that they would treat us as if we had some deficiency from day one and never ask us truly what our successes are and who we are and what we've accomplished and what our passion is, and the why never came up. So I have some serious concerns about the institutional issues that have nothing to do with you. But I expect you to bring that message back somehow.
And we're going to go to the back, and we're going to wrap this up. We've grilled the young people quite a bit, and we're always happy to do that. Go ahead, and we'll wrap up.
Just in response to what you two gentlemen just said, just going with off the model of how is this going to be done in the correct way, and being someone who took Alon Shapiro's class, I can just talk from my personal experience. I'm sure there are other professors on campus who do this kind of model that I think works, and they seem to have to be working in the community from community folks' perspective as well as from students' perspective. It's a huge cultural competency training for the first few months of the class, where you just go through things. And so when we go into the community, it's the mindset is that we don't want to be a burden on these organizations, and we don't want to go in with those kind of paradigms in our head and pre-existing thoughts about who we're working with or what we're supposed to be providing to them. And it's more of a, as we keep talking about, this collaborative learning process. So I think doing that whole cultural competency thing, and however that may look, his class, we just had people come in from the community to teach us different things, having Katrina Baxter, Jamila Sakura, Liz Karabanakis, just a number of folks. I can't name everybody. Cal Walker, Jakeem. Just have people come and teach us things and educate us on a certain level so that we can be productive members of the community is very important. And speaking to what you said, becoming a part of the community, I feel like as a senior now, I have become part of the Ithaca community, not just the Ithaca College community. So from my perspective, I want to be someone who's an advocate for more students getting the same experience I have and knowing people off campus and not just sitting up on the Hill and being someone who receives my education, gets my diploma and leaves. And also just to answer the broader, or just to address this, you know, we did read the IC 2020 plan and the IC 2020 Civic Engagement Task Force plan. However, we aren't the experts on it, but it is interesting to see that most of the folks who have spoken tonight from the school board, it doesn't seem like there's that much continuity or knowledge of the IC 2020 plan, and maybe probably not that much input was received in creating this document, or hasn't been, so I don't know if there's going to be, but if this is going to be a plan that's transforming Ithaca College, and Ithaca College, like we said, is one of the big four parts of this community as a whole, how is the school board not not part of this. So I think that's just a question to be raised and that we can look at.
And certainly this is the first I've heard of the IC 2020 plan, and you all have stood up and done a great job, and we're going to end with anything you want to say to finish up, because it's your show. And then we're going to move on. It always comes back to the presenter, so you're the last word, so we're going to...
We definitely want to thank you all for your ears and your comments. And we definitely learned a lot for ourselves to take back to even push further for the community, as well as, and it's nice to see that you guys are supportive as well of what we're trying to do, and we're hoping that that support will continue as we continue to push, and we hope that you push as well in order to receive this, especially because, like, with the IC 2020, like, for us to even view, we have to log in to something like that. And so, like, even reading the civil engagement part, so, like, it's not accessible to the public per se. And so for reading the civil engagement part, like, you really didn't hear that much about that dialogue taking place, and that was, like, one of our main concerns throughout this whole thing too. So that's just something that we want to push forward and feel that that's a huge issue. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a few more items. We are switching Ithaca College students. If you do want to leave, now will be a good time. If you want to stay, you can stay, but take an opportunity to do it at this time. Leslie, are we doing the student acts first, or?
Ed is here.
Ed
so
is.
He's going to do the athletic.
Right, that's fine. I thought I saw him in the area.
Well, there's it. Hit the lights, that'd be great.
This isn't the students, is
That's
it?
his.
Not one of those.
Basketball.
Thank you so much. Jane and Michelle.
I got that. That's great. Thanks.
I got that trip from what you said. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
What the hell did you just say?
So we're moving on to the athletic participation policy updates, and I think there's going to be some data shared with us here. This is high-tech stuff at Unpleasantly. Oh, there we go.
So you just hit the arrow down.
You're good, Ed. I think we're...
Well, I want to start with a gift. I have an athletic pass for everybody to get in the games for free, so I'll start you off with that.
It's so small. What's the big?
That's the arts piece.
The athletic piece is always small.
The Southern Tier Athletic Conference event.
As long as they work.
Thank you.
Well, be a branch there.
That's it. I was wondering where mine was.
It's good anywhere in the Southern Tier Athletic Conference.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, these are the good ones.
Well, thanks for having me tonight. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share some of our data with our new policy. It certainly has been a challenge as we've gone through it, but one of the goals that I've had going through this is to try to keep kids involved, to really try to keep them eligible to participate, and to structure programs and to structure improvement plans so they can improve, they can get supports that are needed and continue to participate, because many of our kids really need to stay involved, and that's one of the goals of the policy, I believe, is that there's a real acknowledgement of the aspect of staying eligible, but also being responsible and seeking supports for improvements. So I'm going to take you through some of the numbers, and we only have data from 5 and 10 weeks. The 15-week data I haven't been able to process yet. There's just a lot of it. So that's my opening remarks as we start through. And basically, there's 3 levels, if you're familiar with the policy that you folks approved when we started this process this year. The level 1 is called assistance, academic assistance. We've identified at the 5-week mark, we identified 12 students that were between 64.5 and 69.5 that needed academic assistance. Okay? At 10 weeks, we identified 10 students, and 6 of those, and 6 more came from level 2. Example, they exited level 2, and they were back to level 1. So you can see some of the data. And also 10 students did exit after 10 weeks. They exited the program. In other words, they no longer had at least 1 or more grades between 64.5 and 69.5. So we saw some success with that. Okay? Level 2 is called probation. Not a very nice word, but for lack of a better term, that's what the committee did decide to call it. And this is for 1 grade of below 64.4, or 2 or more grades between 64.5 and 69.5. At 5 weeks, we identified 18 students. Okay? At 10 weeks, we identified 7 students, and 6 of those, or 6 came from level 3. So there's really 13 students that were identified. And 6 of those 18 students at the 5 weeks did exit to level 1. So they proceeded up the continuum, if you shall. Level 3 is called suspension, and this is where the kids become ineligible to play. They are told they are no longer to participate for a period of time. We set up programs for those kids. We get counselors involved. We get families involved. And this is the 3rd level. And basically, this is 2 or more grades that are 64.5 and below. Okay. At week 5, we had 7 students. At week 10, we had 7 students. And 6 of those 7 students at week 5 did exit to level 2. So that's a little bit of the data, and that's 10-week data. The 15-week grades are available. They are on my desk. I just need to put everything together. I wasn't real comfortable presenting, not being prepared to share that data in a sound manner. Okay.
Can you talk about? It seems like there's been some success moving students to the lower tier. Can you talk about what things you put in place?
Yeah, that's coming right up. That's fine. That's a great question. Okay, so that's a little bit of the data, and so next slide will be some of the reflections that as I sat down and looked at this over the weekend and today. 37 students were identified at 5 weeks. In other words, we identified 37 students at 5 weeks that needed some level of support.
37 out of how many?
263 athletes.
In the fall, that was the fall?
Yeah. And so that's a number that, quite honestly, I was a little bit surprised. I thought it was a little bit low, to be quite honest with you, because we did open it up to the Ds. The Ds, and that's I thought would cause that number to really swell. 22 of those 37 at 10 weeks either exited the process or moved to a lower level. So we saw some success with 22 of them. Okay, I think that's rich data. I think that's rich data to look at. 24 students were identified at 10 weeks. And like I said, we're now, I should have a number probably by the end of the week how those kids did at the next progress report. One of the things I've noticed with kids, and I think probably I was the same way, is that the real report cards come out at 10, 20, 30, and 40. And I see progress reports that sometimes kids will be, whether procrastinating, not preparing for tests, whatever it might be. But between the 5th to the 10th, I saw some improvement because they really feel like those 10-week grades are the ones that count. Those are the ones that truly are their quarter grades. So that's just an observation that I made with that. Okay. Here's what we do, Seth. Some of the things we do at the high school with our athletes. We have a sports study hall. Monday through Thursday it meets 3:45 to 5:45 across from the library.
When does that get implemented?
That's being implemented right now.
No, I mean,
at what
level?
Sports study hall is level 3. Level 3.
That it's mandatory? Is it optional for the others?
Oh, no, not optional at level 3. But the other ones could attend, yes.
The others can attend.
Level 2, if we feel like there's some concern, we could require study hall. And when we require study hall, they miss practice that day. That's the carrot.
So it's study hall or practice.
Right.
Typically we're talking fall sports anyway, but that's right. Yep. In the wintertime, we're still staggered practice schedules.
In the wintertime, a couple of our coaches have been real creative. When we have a late practice, for example, and we don't start practice till 6 o'clock, I have one coach in particular that mandates those kids go to study hall, which is just outstanding. Our JV boys basketball coach prior to that. So
he's in there with them.
We have there's actually supervisors and tutors in the room. Okay. But he may show up time to time. I know he gets attendance. Okay. Daily and weekly checks. Probably you've seen those at some time. We've been doing those quite a while. Our more intensive kids, we put on daily checks, and basically it's their ticket to practice. So they get a daily from my office in the morning. They take it to all their teachers. At the end of the day, they come back. My signature is their ticket to practice. If my signature does not appear, then they don't practice or participate in that content. So it's on the level 2 kids, we do weekly checks. But the more intensive checks are the level 3. Okay. We do have some counselors that are very active with our athletes that do an outstanding job setting up academic plans for our kids. The families I've dealt with have been great, supportive. Most of the families understand that we are trying to get as many supports for their child as we possibly can, and they're fairly, agreeable, if not thankful, for the support we do offer those kids. So I've had great involvement with parents, and really, one of the things that I've really tried to do in my time at Ithaca High School is stay connected with students. I really try to check in with kids as much as I can. I'm out in the halls, I'm at practices, I'm checking in. And so the kids know that I'm around, and that they better have a good daily, or they better have a good weekly, or I need a tutor, or I want to go to study hall but I have an appointment. So those are things that I try to do as the athletic director, stay connected with kids. Lessons learned. I thought about this, today for the students. I think responsibility is a big thing. They need to be responsible for their progress reports. They need to be responsible to go to study hall if required to go to study hall by the athletic director. And they have to be aware that they could lose eligibility. I think anytime you have a policy, it has to have some teeth behind it. And I have restricted kids. And when I restrict kids, word gets out. And so kids become more in tune with the policy. It's like if if they don't want to play ball, well, they're going to sit. You know, if they don't want to follow the rules and seek remediation and do the things that are asked of them, then, you know, there's going to be an issue with their eligibility. So, yes.
Are we communicating these at the beginning of each season to the, you know, whether it be football, basketball, hockey, whatever, that this is a process that they need to follow?
They being students?
Students, yeah,
yes.
Student athletes.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time with coaches on this too. And I'm hoping that coaches are sharing the same messages, because those folks are the ones at the ground level. You know, coaches see the kids every day. And I don't get in the gym every day. I don't get to the rink every day. So, you know, I think it's important that, you know, coaches are at the ground level, and coaches are responsible too to make those connections with kids and to share the information. So.
Go ahead, Sir.
Sean forced me to be on the policy committee, so I was involved in drafting this. And so I wanted to ask you quite a few questions. The first one is, we talked about a preseason and postseason monitoring, and not just keeping this. And I know we've only had one season, but just any thoughts you might have on that.
Okay.
That'll be the first one.
You must read my mind, because I'm going into challenges next.
Oh, okay.
There's some challenges with this policy. It's not.
Okay.
And so if you just, I think it's the next one. Yeah, there's the challenges, and it's your first question. One of the challenges I found is tracking students from participation to non-participation by season. Example, there's an athlete that's on the soccer team, okay, and they're a level 2 kid. Okay, at 10 weeks. And that athlete, that's all they do, is play soccer. So one of the challenges and I challenge myself, that I have to really do a better job tracking kids from their sport, where they want to do good. And I think back to the conversation we had at Policy Committee, where one of the things I don't want is kids to feel we only care about them during the season.
Yeah.
You know, I think we talked long and hard about how do we make kids feel like we care about them all the time. So one of the challenges that I have to have as one man trying to, you know, deal with, you know, over 260 athletes is, how do I do that? And that's a challenge that I have to really, step up to the plate. Are we doing a perfect job with that right now? I would say we're not perfect.
Has Tim Moon been involved in developing any ideas as far as how tracking might be easier for you, as far as reports and things that might?
As a matter of fact, Tim just sent me some data this afternoon on the 15-week stuff, so that's on my desk. So he's been very supportive.
For kids outside of the season?
Yep. Yeah, from our fall sports too. Those kids are still on this grid. As a matter of fact, I was looking through some of the numbers before I came over here, and I have to really do some reflecting. So, but that's one of the challenges, is to really stay on those kids that do exit from our athletic program, and they're gone. Because now I have to because the carrot when they're playing the sport is easy, it's the sport. But how do you what's the carrot when they're not involved in sport? And that's a significant challenge for us. You know, and I'm really going to have to spend some time with that. The RTI, I know, is part of the process. We're still trying to, you know, implement that and get that off the ground. Again, it's about as successful right now as tracking the kids from one sport to the other. It's been a challenge.
Who you think's the point person on the RTI? I mean, if you're the AD at this point, I mean,
Well, there's an RTI team at the high school. So, you know, I would work with them, and I would work with the high school administration on that also. But that's another area, and again, I'm being completely honest, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I want to involve those people. And lastly, I think the process, yes, Jim?
Ed, are you saying that you've got the study hall, and you've got tutors, and you've got the coaches involved, and these people are working independently of the RTI people? Because if they're in those levels, they're getting RTI services.
Possibly.
Not probably?
Well, the levels of this policy don't equate to the levels of the RTI policy, so don't be confused.
All right, well, it's certainly in the worst level with the 3.
Actually, Jay, I think you're right on it. RTI is supposed to be at all levels. I mean, even to the point of excelling students who are excelling. Right? Is that what we were told by Connie? And
well, it's many levels. I don't know.
And Connie could certainly speak to this.
They should be. So you're telling me at this point they haven't integrated?
I haven't coordinated. Let's put it that way. I haven't put the data with the number of students that are already in the RTI process and what levels they're at. I have not done that.
You haven't put the numbers together, but we need to get the kids. And the tutor, or shouldn't the tutors be talking to the RTI team and the RTI team talking to the...
I agree.
Put that up at the top.
I think what we could do here also is, we have the 3-tier process for RTI. Looking at the 3 levels that you have for academic eligibility, you could make the conversion to that and have what you would do specifically at level 1 and make the correlation back to some of the level 1 components, and then you go to level 2. I think that would be an easy match that we could coordinate.
Is that explicit in the policy, or is it, the policy lays out?
The policy suggests RTI.
Yeah. Suggests RTI.
Yes.
Go ahead, Eldred.
I just want to state the obvious. I mean, Ed, last year when you were at the table, we were trying to have this conversation and we couldn't. So I was glad I wasn't drinking water when you apologized for not having the 15-week data, right? Because you gave us something that we just couldn't, we didn't have it last year, which is 0 through 5 and 5 to 10. So thank you for that. This is the second time in a row we've had a conversation about dynamic and genuine data. Connie with the classification rates, and now this. So I mean, the questions might be difficult. We might not have all the answers, but I just got to tell you, I'm sitting here thinking this is a sane conversation. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's not the same. It's a sane.
It's a sane.
Well, I'm trying. Yeah.
It's a sane.
I felt like I left it.
No, exactly the opposite.
You're bringing the info that we need to see.
Yeah, we haven't. This is when we can do our work.
This is the baseline to be able to operate from. We didn't have last year.
Real information. So thank you. I have one actual question that might also be obvious too. We assume that children have to attend class and that they have to actually be in school in order to move up the chain, right, out of the classifications. Do you get any regular reports about those kind of basic things? Their attendance
Yes.
and then their class attendance.
Yes, attendance is right on their daily reports. So if I don't see a student athlete on a given day with a daily and they're absent, and we track that. If absences are and there's a few right now I'm dealing with as I read their comments on their report, their progress report, it says absences are a big part of their grade.
Right.
They're just not coming to class.
Right.
And not class, but school. So, that's something I'm dealing with a couple right now that we have to try to, work with families and see what's going on.
Don't they have to be in school by, is it 11:30 or something? Isn't there a time to participate? They have to be there the whole day?
Well, I encourage the whole day.
I know, but I think what I'm hearing is...
The attendance policy, that's a different...
I'd rather not broadcast the time as standard that is there. I encourage the whole day.
Okay,
but
I mean, it's
that's
not...
kind of old school, that's old school, Judy, showing up and going to school all day.
Yeah. But we don't have that in the policy, that they have to...
The attendance.
No, not in the academic athletic eligibility policy.
The other question I had, since I can now ask it, when a child is on level 3 and is not able to practice or participate, how many of those children quit?
Quit school, quit
just the sport, or so that there is nothing there for them?
I would say this year, I could pull the numbers back up as I look at them, but I could think of right now there were 3 kids that we lost.
Did we lose them to school or just...
No, we lost them from athletics. They're still in school.
Okay.
They're still in school.
That was my question. Well, you lost to athletics in total, but declared ineligible. Is that really the total? Is that the total? Not really. Is that the total?
Fall, fall I made 3 kids. I had 3 kids that I had to say no more.
And Ed, well, I'm going to ask, but your intent is to keep as many kids active and eligible as possible.
Well, one of the things I think when we developed the policy was we put some discretion in the policy, so we had some room to work. One of the things I was really uncomfortable with the previous policy was it was 2 and you're done. You were done for the season. If you were level 3, you were done. We kicked you off, and you just went away. One of the things that, as I worked with the policy committee on this, is that, and I think they agreed, is that we want to keep them involved as much as we can. I understand there comes a time when they don't really deserve to be involved. So, yeah, my goal is to keep kids active, keep them involved. Dave is very clear, kids that are engaged, kids that are connected, are going to just, they're going to do better. They're just going to do better. So I think that's our role here, at least I see my role as the athletic directors. That's pivotal. And I think coaches take that seriously too.
Seth, more.
So Ed, I'm glad you talked about the AD discretion. So I was going to ask you how that works. It seems like there's a place for that, and we've talked about that, personally and stuff.
Well, one of the things I do as far as process goes, when the grades come out, I run the list. I talk with the level 3 kids first, and we have a sit down with family, or it could be a phone conversation if I can't get them in. We determine really a collaborative effort, what's the best approach. And I go into those sort of with an open mind. I don't go in with any preconceived notions. I sort of just let it ride and see where the families are, see where the student athlete is, and see if we can, make some progress. I look at the comments on the report card. Often I see hasn't handed in a project, hasn't handed in an assignment. Well, if you hand this project in and hand this assignment in, your grade's now going to be passing. So if I see those that are easy fixes, okay, we take care of that right now. If I see behavior's a problem, or if I see the effort's inconsistent, now I'm getting a little bit more concerned about what do we have to do with this one. So yeah, there's some discretion, and but it's not totally me. It's counselors, it's families, coaches are involved.
On the RTI thing, I wanted to encourage you, as the AD, not to feel, even though this is athletic eligibility, not to feel that this is your entire baby. On the RTI front, we want that committee and whoever else was principal, to carry some of that too, because it seems clear that the kids are responding to, this attention, at least on the numbers that you showed us. 2 things, and they're kind of linked. Number one, we talked last year about this extracurricular expansion of this type of system. It wouldn't necessarily be under you, but what you just said, is clearly the reason why. When kids are engaged with something they love, you can often use that to use those relationships to coaches, mentors, teachers, to encourage them to engage better in their schoolwork. So what are your thoughts on extracurricular expansion, saying if the kids in band, we have the same requirements as far as their academic performance, and then just generally, how do we make this better?
Well, I can answer part 2. Part 1 sort of loaded for me with the music, and I would opt for a more collaborative answer. I think anytime you have eyes on kids, and anytime you have more contact and connections with kids, philosophically, I support that. So if the arts have something like this, and it means more connections, if it means more engagement, I support it. If it's punitive, I really don't support punitive. I don't agree with that. I think there has to be some sort of collaboration there. How do we make this better? I think those challenges are pretty clear. That's where I really feel we need to improve. The last one, dynamic I think it's a changing process. I think, you know, I learn every time I deal with a student. You know, I learn something different with that, you know, the process, and, you know, what works with kids, what doesn't work, what works with that kid. So I think it's an ever-changing process, and I think it'll grow. So, but I'm encouraged. I think for the first 15 weeks with a new policy, I'm somewhat pleased. Somewhat pleased with it. So.
Last thing, how much additional time are you spending on this new policy? Is it a burden that
It
way?
happens at the 5, 10, and 15 weeks. Example would be this week was the end of 15 weeks. I met with at least 20 student athletes over the last 2 days. Today's Tuesday? Yeah, 2 days. So right now it takes up significant time. But it's all good time because it gets me with the kids. You know, often my days sometimes aren't enough with the kids, so I don't mind it at all with the time.
Jay had a question.
Since Tim's here, maybe if I can ask a question about our procedures and our data, the information that the district has on kids. If you receive the grades and whatnot, and then you figure out who's level 1, 2, and 3, is it possible for him to look at those students and see what RTI services they're receiving?
No, but it is simply because not directly. We keep active RTI services in a different database than we keep our grades in. But it is possible for the RTI team at the high school to run DNF lists. So if we have a student athlete who has 2 Ds, the RTI team is going to know that we have a student that has 2 Ds, whether they're an athlete or not. They see every student in that school. And so they're aware of students that are failing multiple classes and may need other levels of intervention. So now the key will be, can we identify that athlete for the RTI team so that we can coordinate services with this department?
And because I'm concerned here, Ed says he's calling up the student athlete once they've been identified, and you're trying to come up with a plan to have them improve their academic performance. Mm-hmm. He's the athletic director. And I think that's great, but I think I'd like to see the academic.
But the policy states. Seth, you know the policy better than I do, but the policy states that these actions will be taken, and it's an athletic policy. So
Jay, I can just address.
Go ahead.
Jay, I think what you're trying to highlight is that the RTI team and what's happening with student athletes relative to a plan that's outlined in the eligibility policy should be converging, right? And so I think that's really a simple fix in terms of a protocol or a piece that Ed can add to a sort of clerical action, right, in connecting with the folks at the high school, Lori Willick, Dr. Goodman, who are Dr. Willick and Dr. Goodman, who are facilitators, RTI specialists at the high school. So he can really just share the list of the 37 students with them, and they can immediately tell him if these students are in the hopper, so to speak, to be taken to an RTI meeting, or if they've already been taken to an RTI meeting, and what that team has decided in terms of a level of service in the 3-tier problem-solving model that they've decided is appropriate support for that student at that time. And so I think it's an easy fix. It's just an additional step.
Well, it brings it completes it. It's the whole deal.
It brings it full circle.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And when you say tracking the students from participation to non-participation by season, in an ideal world, isn't that for the RTI team to be doing? I don't see, you don't have any connection with the kids at that point.
It's
seeing them around
idealistic.
isn't.
I'm not saying I haven't seen any of them. I've seen a few of them. I mean, we track the ones we know about, just from hall engagement. Checking in with them.
And Jay,
we haven't lost them all.
That's critical. I mean, I think the key is when you're coaching a kid, you know, you have them for those 6-8 weeks, but we want that student to see you and say, hey, you know, Coach Redmond, you know, cares about how I'm doing, you know, off season, you know, so that's critical, and that goes to the expansion idea of this into extracurricular. If you're in the, you know, yearbook club, we want that advisor to see you in the hall and say, hey, what's going on with your grades? What, you know, that type of thing where, you know, so that's key.
That's an ideal, but it's...
But I would take it even further. Let's stop lying, because even in high school, we're not talking about seasons anymore, right? I mean, doing trainings, doing workouts, right? So in other words, there's long-term contact with many of these coaches throughout, more than the actual season that takes place. But I think the real goal was the way in which, how can we leverage, I think Seth kept repeating this throughout the policy committee, which I can see you know, positioning yourself to try to get back on that policy committee, so I'm really appreciative of that. But I think the idea was to leverage those relationships by saying, we are so committed to your academic success that we're going to use whatever we possibly can to encourage you and support you to do better, right? And so that was the idea behind it. And I'm not going to lie to you, I think this is one of the few policies where we have some beginning, right, some rough edges without question, but that's significant movement if we're taking 22 kids out of 37 and moving them in the direction in which we want to move them, which is an increase in their academic success. Now, I'm sure there's all kind of, you know, particular circumstances, situations, but as a first run, that's promising data that we can probably do some other things and add some additional supports, do some more linking together. We can revisit the policy in terms of some of the language we use and the way in which those steps happen. That's no problem with that. But the data seems, I'm pleased as someone who likes numbers. Like that's good, that's significant. So thank you for sharing the work, and thank you for the work as well.
Because our concern with this policy, we actually toughened it, and we actually, we thought we'd have more failures, more kids not moving, and you know, so that was something.
Right. I think, you know, kids do better with accountability, though. You know, and I actually was on the committee prior to this change for the policy. And Ed and I worked on that, and that's what we talked about. We talked also about the change where, you know, back in the days, the gym teacher, your coach was in the school, and, you know, even the worst football players, Rob, you know, when they saw the coach coming, you know, when they saw the coach coming and they were acting up in the hallway, when they saw the coach, they straightened up. You know, and
you never acted up with Coach Morosco.
You never acted up, you know, and then if the coach. You know, so that set of expectations and that accountability piece extending out is always like.
And to that point, Chris, and you know, the accountability piece, I think from the board also wants to be pushed back on the coaches.
Yeah.
And especially, and Ed, you said a little bit ago, you said you were hoping that the coaches were doing what you told them to do, is to highlight this and make connections with their students. And we've talked a lot about, as we've upgraded our facilities, is to have those off-season expectations for academics also. Okay, if you're not playing a sport, you're in the strength and conditioning center with the team, and you know, we're tracking your academics and your core strength. It's the same thing. There's a continuum, and we're getting ready for next year. As you've said, Ed, next season starts the day after the season ends, and that's what has to be pushed down to the coaches to make sure that they have the programming in place, that they are reaching out. It's not just Ed Redmond, the athletic director, but it's individual coaches. They've got to know those kids, and they know where they are. Go ahead, Chris, then over.
And that also translates to their behavior, being model citizens in school and setting that example. You know, the coaches need to start using that expectation language, because if we don't start changing our language and our interaction, we're going to get the same results. So this policy has to take on that living, breathing documentation of expectation, and then the coaches have to really hold them accountable to it and change that language. You know, when you're in school, you behave this way. You're representative of this team. You know, your grades are a representation of this team, and this is our expectation of you. And it sounds lofty and it sounds ideal, but I know I had coaches tell me that. And I had coaches tell me, if you think you're going to D your way through this season, D your way out the door. And I don't see anything wrong with that. So and that's just my expectation, and I hope we can convey that, because I think we have an opportunity here. You said the carrot. We have an opportunity to make this really substantial.
Elder, you had...
Yeah, I was just going to ask Tim or Ed, if I'm reading this correctly, I think the number of students who were in the lightest tier, if you will, was 12. The number of kids in tier 2 grew to 18, and then the number of kids in who are performing at the lowest level shrank again. If this works, is the expectation that those numbers will change, and that the number of kids will be largest in the first tier, smaller in the second tier, and then smaller again in that third tier, right? That's our expectation, right? Statistically?
And I think you probably see it grow, shrink, and contract just because, kids are going to test like kids do. So they'll play it out until they feel the heat, and then they'll really put the work in.
But I mean, over time, you just, to your point, if this model becomes clear, you want a trend, and the students know, well, you might have to go play the flute if you want to get away this year, because athletics is not the place. I mean, if that's the goal, then we should see that trajectory, right?
If it's applied.
I think this is to Judy's point as well.
You like that?
I was trying to just keep it moving. I think one of the ideas, the data point we don't have, to see, is how many students just didn't even try out because they felt the grades are so bad. And so, what do we then do with those young folks? And I don't know if we think it's a substantial number of people, if it's a few, but I imagine it's got to be more than one, right? Who just, their grades were so bad, or too much time, what the case may be. Sure. So, but as a first step for me, this puts it on the road.
May not even be in school at all.
Yeah.
True story. More for Ed. Ed can go back and see how the girls finished up with basketball, which the game is over by now.
I just want to thank you all for your continued support of our programs, from the coaches and the student athletes. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do, as board members. It certainly doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
I only have 4 slides.
So we have another computer switch. So that's great. We're getting used to this tonight.
And I'll transition by saying the beginning of January 2010, we were all extremely saddened to hear that Phoebe Prince had committed suicide in Western Massachusetts. And 6 students who attended school with her or who were nearby were charged and found guilty for their involvement in being directly responsible for her committing suicide. And so that really, when that case hit the news, the media, it really sent off shockwaves, not only in the political realm, but for school districts. I just lost that.
You're good. You're back.
And so New York followed suit, and our former Governor Patterson signed into law and effect the Dignity for All Students Act. And so I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about and just updating you about the act and what we as the Ithaca City School District, along with the other 700 or so districts in the state of New York, are required to do prior to July 1st, 2012. So I promise this is the only thing I'll rewrote. The Dignity for All Students Act, it amends education law to put in place procedures for the creation of school environments free of discrimination and harassment. And this is where districts are really grappling across the state, that you have to create an environment. So that means you have to control the people who are in the environment. And that's going to be very, very difficult. Districts across the state are very, very concerned about this, because you can be held responsible for not creating an environment. And so we have been working hard, I know that at least the 5 years that I've been in the Ithaca City School District, with case law that has come down as a result of our district. And we're studied quite a bit. When I go to these trainings, we're actually mentioned in the trainings. And so I think we've made some steps in the right direction around issues of harassment, bullying, hazing, but we do have miles to go before we sleep. So again, the magic number or date is July 1st, 2012. That's important because we have students that are in school. School is in session for us. We have summer school and other programming for students. So everything must be approved prior to that time. So what is the state requiring us to do for that July 1st deadline? First, they are requiring us to have policies that relate to harassment and bullying. So you're aware of our harassment policy 5020. 5020.1 is sexual harassment. Policy 5020.2 is racial discrimination and harassment, and then in the Code of Conduct we have sections that have portion of policy or elaborate on those issues more. So we need to ensure that our policies align with what the law is dictating. We also must modify our Code of Conduct down at the bottom to include age-appropriate sections, and we have done that along weapons, especially knives, and other areas giving principals or their designees discretion relative to handling particular behaviors of students based on a developmental model. So we'll continue to do that. We're going to actually take this one step further. We're going to, for the 2012-13 school year, have a brochure that actually is an elementary base so that it's accessible by elementary students. Because what we find more times than not is students get introduced to the Code of Conduct after they've broken it. And so we're working hard to be much more proactive and preventative by having students and their families be educated. The DASA Act also
Republic of Korea is a
requires us
I'm sorry.
to not have electronic outbursts.
Especially Korean.
We're required to develop guidelines to be used in a school training program. If the board and the community remembers, we did have a bias prevention program that really outlined a lot of that. I've assumed some of those responsibilities and it's been distributed through the schools. So we'll just make sure if there are pieces within that program that need to be revamped to align with the law, we'll certainly do that. But I really feel we're so much further ahead than many other districts are at this point. And the piece that's scary, if I can use that word, is the state has not outlined what that is yet. And it's going to be January in, what, a week or so. So I continually check the website. I'm talking with other districts to see where are they, and we just don't have that information yet. So that's a piece that, you know, is, again, a little scary that we don't have that because, again, remember, July 1st is our deadline. So we have, when we talk about a school training program, all of our school employees must be trained also by that time. So all school employees, teachers, teachers' assistants, clerical, bus drivers, administrators, everyone who works for the Ithaca City School District. So not having the information about what that training program entails is going to really push us very close. But we'll utilize a variety of venues, whether it's, you know, the face-to-face professional development. I've already spoken with BOCES. We're looking to do some online professional development where people can log in and if they, you know, complete a module or a piece that they can receive credit. So we're looking at ways to make it easy for people to fulfill this requirement. And then each one of our schools, so we have 12 in the Ithaca City School District, we must identify a Dignity for All Students coordinator. So we'll have 12, and then we'll figure out what the mechanism is as far as reporting and professional development and meeting time for that group of individuals.
Leslie, can I ask you a conceptual question? As you sat there and spoke about the need to train everyone, we've heard that before relatively recently. Decision that will go unnamed. As you sit there during your day and you think about all the 1,000 mandates you plow through, is there is there a way for you to consolidate some of the training and or data collection so that one thing you do satisfies more than one of these requirements for you to do it? Is that the way we structure? Does that question make sense?
Well, let me do a say back. Getting more than one bird with one stone.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So.
Because this sounds like 6 other things.
Right.
That talking about.
It does.
You can't possibly spend your day collecting data and doing it for all 6 different rabbits.
Right. The data collection piece, and I'm going to speak to that in just a moment. We already collect a lot of this data through the VADR, the Violent and Disruptive Incident Reporting. So I think that will be an easy fix for us as far as the collection. But again, once we have that information shared with us from the state, we can figure out, is it an electronic transmission, which I'm hoping, or what does that look like? Do we collect it in an Excel spreadsheet? Can we develop a database? We're trying to just figure this all out because we don't have the information yet. And as far as the training, again, once that comes down and we know what the mandatory pieces are. For example, I've already met with Mr. Ellis just the other day, our transportation supervisor, and the bus drivers have a mandatory training that occurs in January. A lot of these components are covered within that, so we would be able to handle dignity for all students during that particular training. So we just need to see what it looks like and then make natural connections to activities, professional development activities that are already occurring in the district. Does that answer your question?
As well as it can be.
Given the information that we have. And again,
all the stuff coming at you.
We are going to have to utilize technology, and we can do training modules, kind of everything from showing a particular scenario and how would you respond, and you can type in your response or say in your response, to just, lecture or fact information. So we're developing that even before we get the information, because we want to be as prepared as we possibly can once we receive it.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was at a meeting where someone pointed out this was a perfect example of an unfunded mandate. And just so that, because you'll run into people, and sometimes if you need a good one to pull out as an example, a horrible thing happened in another state, and our legislators said, we've got to do something, we're going to pass a law, and that'll stop that from ever happening again, of course. So we've got to react and show whatever, so the public that we are, responding to this, and we're going to, as I say, pass a law so it won't ever happen again. And so for whatever intentions and a horrible thing happened, and this is seen as a solution, and they pass this, and it pushes down with no money. The training, the time, the record keeping. And no matter how valuable this may be and whatnot, the state didn't give any money to this. So this is a good example of maybe a good intention that came without funds, and where does it go, and where's it gonna, we'll find out. But anyway, just if you need one.
Okay.
Leslie, when you mentioned it, would our bias prevention efforts over the last few years, does that cover us? Have we done a lot of this work, some of this work?
I would say, given what I know about the requirements, we've done a lot of the work.
Okay. We
Once
tried.
we get the final pieces.
We did have a director at one point a leader of bias. District-wide director. And eventually we pushed that back down, really assuming that the leadership at each school would be that really setting the tone and be the bias prevention officer. Do you foresee that this DSA coordinator would essentially be the principal, or it could be someone else?
I think it's a both and. I think the principals absolutely need to be knowledgeable, but given the immense amount of collection and time and effort that I think this is going to take, I think we're going to need additional resources. Because what we're going to see, and this is not going to be, I'm sure, a surprise to anyone, is that our numbers are going to probably, if not they'll probably double. There will be increased reporting, which is good. We want people reporting, and we're going to have to manage all of that because we're going to have to collect it, we're going to have to record it, we're going to have to respond to it. So I don't know what the resource looks like just yet, given I don't know all of the requirements, but
right, everything that we ask our building leaders to do already, and this is another layer that it's just going to take away from teaching and learning in the classroom, well, their interaction with another aspect of their job to do this. So you're saying that we're going to have to bring resources to bear?
I'm quite sure we're going to have to, yes.
Okay.
So, last slide. What are our next steps? We need to convene a Dignity for All Students Act committee. I'm going to convene this committee with Celia Clement, who's a social worker, very well respected and very knowledgeable about the topic. And I think it's just important to have somebody working on the front lines. I have more of the balcony view, she has the dance floor view. So we'll be convening a committee that has everything from PTSA representatives, the elementary, middle, and high school levels, administrators, teachers, students, special education, transportation, etc. So we'll have let me just make sure I mention also coaches and phys ed teachers because of the bullying, hazing, and harassment that happens in that area. We'll have community members, so law enforcement, hopefully an attorney or someone from the legal perspective. And Tim, Mr. Moon, obviously will be very instrumental in this committee because of the immense data collection that's associated with it. So we're going to convene this committee and we'll work through these 4 mandates that the state has given us. We also, once we get through the mandated pieces and/or simultaneously, we also want to create a bullying think tank about the best ways to address it. At times I'll get phone calls from parents, caregivers who are just exasperated. You know, my child is being bullied again. And the child that has committed it, the bully, has received a consequence. They've been suspended or they've been talked to, and it's still not fixing the issue, or it's continuing, or it's been passed on to someone else in the school. So we want to convene a committee of minds to come together to figure out how do we address this in the most proactive ways, or how can we intervene in that particular situation. I mentioned the data collection. We'll need to figure out what the repository is, how they want it, and is it reported to the state on every 10 weeks, semesterly, annually. We'll need to know what that is. So we'll figure out what makes the best sense. I've been in communication with Dr. Eversley Bradwell around the policy development and making sure that we get that on the policy committee in a timely fashion so that it will be approved by June 30th. And then certainly we will be making Board of Education updates, so you all are in the loop of where we are. Periodically we'll be sending information home through board packets, electronically, so you know where we are in the process. So that's really the update in a nutshell.
Just a slight shift. I realize, Jay, I think you're right, this is an excellent example of an unfunded mandate that happens. With that being said, if you go back and start pulling apart some of the intent behind the DASA Act, it actually is to increase our teaching and learning by making sure all students feel respected and safe in classrooms. So as much as this is for lack of a better term, an increased burden on schools, the end result, if done well, will actually increase our teaching and learning and increase our student achievement. And so it's very easy for us to get frustrated by all the amount of work and everything else that takes place without understanding that the flip side of this is actually having safer school climates for our students.
Well, just going along with that, I just want to insert that because it's important. If you look at gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered populations around bullying and harassment, this very much so connects to their academic achievement and their success. So, in
fact, PFLAG, if I'm not mistaken, is touting this act as being one of the strongest pieces of legislation they've seen in quite some time, because it's supposed to actually come with teeth. I don't know what that means to us, but that's the idea behind it, right? But more importantly, I think you said unnamed, but the injunctive relief that was mentioned in the Kearney decision, a number of those things have, at least my reading of the DASA Act, has given us a little bit of a head start in essence that we've already put a number of these things in place to address some of these things. So unlike some other school districts, you may not have had to, by force or legal decree or the case may be thinking this way. We've already started thinking this way in quite a number of ways and doing some of these trainings for some folks. So you're right, it's going to be interesting to see when they actually release what the requirements are. But we should feel like this may actually be an opportunity for us to let the community know how much work we've actually been doing in our district, right? The ways in which we've been trying to address these things, and not that everything is fine and dandy, but there's been significant amounts of resources, people's time, expertise brought to bear on trying to make our schools as safe as they can for all students. And this may be an opportunity for us to really reflect about that and share that information much more broadly as well. So there may be some positives that come out of it above and beyond the incredible workload that it creates as well.
I think it's also going right along with that. I appreciate you sharing that or saying that, is that it can also give an update of where we are relative to the current case, and that it's not forgotten, and that the work has not been set aside, or that we're not doing anything.
Splitting a fine hair, in addition to what you just said, Leslie, and then educating the general population that the issue with human rights law as it relates to vulnerable populations, in particular gay and lesbian and transgender children, may be somewhat addressed by this, because that was a concern way beyond the specifics of what happened with that individual child, is that if we pull the rug of HR out from under this specific group of children, then they have no protection anywhere in the state. People were terrified of that. That's why we got the amicus briefs. So here's a moment to actually educate people. You know, that may not be as terrifying as it once seemed, because now we have yet one additional layer of state-sponsored kindness.
Did you say state-sponsored kindness?
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. But that's what I heard. So, so Leslie, anything else regarding this?
I tried to keep it short and simple.
Oh no, it was very good. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for sitting in tonight for Dr. Brown. And we're just, I believe we're just going to go ahead and finish up with anything else that we need to do with the agenda tonight. Anything else? Any other board announcements?
One board announcement. Most of the board members heard this at the Finance/Facilities Committee meeting last week. We just got the first set of policies back from NISBA, who is reviewing the 100 series, the 1000 series, the 2000 series, and the 3000 series. The policy committee meeting, and we're inviting Seth to join us. We'll be meeting on January 5th, if I'm not mistaken, to go through the first 400 series, 1000 series to review. In mid-February, probably early March, we'll get the second batch, and then by the end of the school year, we'll get the third batch. This is all in preparation of going through our entire policy book and digitizing the entire process. So above and beyond looking at the athletic policy, above and beyond some of the DASA and student the code of conduct we're going to do, the policy committee will be fairly busy over the next couple months trying to get our policy book in a place that it should have been probably 5 years ago.
And I believe we have policies in our Dropbox, do we not?
For all board members, I put exactly what NISBA sent to me so all board members can see it and make comments on it. There's an instruction sheet.
Flip through.
Right, there's an instruction sheet of how to read their recommendations, edits, suggestions, additions, deletions, etc. So for any board member who doesn't want to attend the policy committee meeting but wants to give their feedback, by all means go take a look at that. It's pretty exhaustive. I think there's something like 60 pages of edits before, above and beyond the actual policies themselves. But we'll have fun.
But it is the policy is the first meeting of the 2012
rightfully so.
Year, so rightfully so, and just noting the importance of the work that is going on.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Anything else from the group before we really get into Christmas and all that? We're going to go here and then over there.
I just want to say I appreciate Sean and Pat for what they do on the policy committee.
And we're going to do Kumbaya. Here we go.
I'm also on the policy committee.
We appreciate you.
I really appreciate you.
I would have a note for Seth in the newspaper, Skinny Atlas. I just wanted to have you notice that and.
No more dancing for you.
I said it to him, so he's aware.
Okay.
Skinny Atlas did eliminate their winter formal because of inappropriate dancing, and they they canceled. So
and they didn't quote Seth's graduation speech as the...
No, they did not. No, they did not. So apparently it's a
problem.
A big issue out there, and I never go anywhere, so I didn't know. So go ahead, Pat.
Well, I just wanted to point out, my husband read that to me the other night when it came out. That's what we do for fun. And he sent it to Sean because at the end of the article, it blames rap and hip-hop music, which is, of course, Sean's area of teaching expertise, so we thought he could bring this into the scholarly arena and perhaps come up with a solution for our district.
So Pat, I'm still trying to... What do you do for fun again? What do you do?
Comment on school board policies.
Oh, I thought. You see, I thought it was the other one.
Hip-hop dancing.
But I was just trying to follow what was going on. But,
Ukrainian dance was the original
grinding.
Hip-hop. No, it's gender separate. But my husband at that age could spin on his head and do the whole leg stuff. Now.
There we go.
Just wanted to point out an important thing. The elementary school basketball season is underway, and Elgin and I have decided to continue the dynasty, and we practice. First practice is tomorrow. Games will start after the holiday, and the 5th grade elementary school dynasty continues. Is that correct, Elgin?
You got it.
And I would like to point out that great players make good coaches. Is that
Yes, indeed.
That's not the case.
Thanks, Seth. And yes, it is a season. It's a great opportunity for the kids to travel to away games to other elementary schools that they don't get a chance to go to all the time. So it's always a lot of fun. And the parents step up. It's all volunteers, and we appreciate that. And Susan, you go ahead.
First of all, good evening, and I'm glad you're all here. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa, and Festivus for the rest of us. And the grievance day for Festivus for the rest of us was last Monday. I don't know how many of you follow Seinfeld, but that was a day where it was a day where all grievances are aired. So it's too late now. And to address the issue of the dancing, I know that there is a proposal in by one of the phys ed teachers to have dancing included in the phys ed instruction so that students will have some more formal dance experience and other dances that they can perform other than those which have us raising our awareness. And it is an attempt to give kids some of the skills, social skills and other, from different levels of society. So they're going to have all kinds of dance. So they're working on that. So just so you know, we are being proactive. I'd love to see some of you there. It would be great. The other thing is I want to say some positive things about how teachers handled lockdown, how students handled lockdown, how well it went considering situations. I know there are lots of questions about the rights of students, and there's a great deal of respect by those who are in the teaching position, keeping students well aware of their rights and the dignity and the seriousness of a lockdown and exactly why we do this. So that went well. There have been a number of incidents due to illness and other things that have happened in the school, and the practices have served us well and done well. And some of the teachers are truly to be commended by the way they're being honest and truthful with the students about expectations, drug, alcohol, and other things. And so I hope the public and the board knows that there are a lot of very honest and courageous steps being taken to help the students be aware of what's going on in their lives. This is high pressure for these adolescents, and it's good to see the teachers help them and mentor them and become their friends and create relations. For some kids that are facing a really rough season, the holidays is a tough time for some of these kids. And to note that we're providing some of the kids who are homeless or otherwise with access to food and to homes and shelters, and a holiday with support and contacts is something for which all of us should be commended. We are truly working on the relationship aspect, and I want to thank the colleagues that I'm working with for the effort they're doing without knowledge and praise of others, but just doing it because it's important. So I'd like to let you know that. Thank you,
Susan. Anything else? And I think we'll entertain motions to adjourn. Without objection, and thank you all for a great 2011. We'll see you all in 2012, and enjoy the holidays.